The Auroran Expanse was a vast and volatile region of contested space, a theater of constant skirmishes between the galactic powers. Among these powers, the Rethari Dominion, a race of coldly logical, biologically engineered warriors, had long regarded humans as an inferior species, brash, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. Commander Ariala Vindar, a decorated officer in the Dominion's fleet, embodied this disdain. Her every decision was shaped by the Dominion's creed of supremacy and order. From her ship, the Vraction, she led a precision strike force tasked with maintaining Dominion control over the disputed systems. For her, humans were little more than pests, frustratingly persistent, but ultimately irrelevant in the grand tapestry of the galaxy. It was in the aftermath of one such engagement that Ariala's life changed forever. The ambush had been perfectly orchestrated, or so Ariala believed. The Vraction's sleek, obsidian-hued hull shimmered against the backdrop of a dying red star as it unleashed a barrage of plasma fire upon the human fleet. Victory was assured, until it wasn't. Unbeknownst to Ariala, the humans had devised a countermeasure. A single, high-yield electromagnetic pulse missile bypassed the Vraction's shields, crippling its systems. As alarms blared and her crew scrambled for survival, Ariala realized they had underestimated the humans' ingenuity. The humans didn't hesitate. Their ships swarmed the Vraction, finishing it off with ruthless efficiency. Ariala barely managed to eject in her escape pod as the ship exploded behind her. She drifted for hours, the pod's life support systems failing, her pride wounded as much as her body. The stars blurred through the pod's cracked viewport, and for the first time in her disciplined life, Ariala felt something foreign. Helplessness. "Hang in there," a gruff voice crackled through the comms as the pod's hatch was pried open. The face staring back at her was distinctly human. A man in a patched-up EVA suit with a scruffy beard and piercing gray eyes. "Don't talk," he said, his voice brusque but not unkind. "You've got oxygen poisoning. Let me get you to my ship." Ariala tried to protest, but her vision darkened. When she awoke, she was lying in a cramped medical bay aboard a dilapidated salvage ship. The human was there, sitting in a battered chair, fiddling with a datapad. "You're lucky I was in the neighborhood," he said without looking up. "Name's Sam Calder, salvage operator. And you are?" "Commander Ariala Vindar of the Rethari Dominion," she replied, her voice icy. "Why did you save me, human?" Sam shrugged. "Didn't seem right to leave you out there." Ariala scowled. "I would have let you die." Sam chuckled. "Yeah, you Rethari types have a reputation for that. But I'm not you." As the days passed, Ariala was forced to rely on Sam's care. Though his ship was a hodgepodge of mismatched parts, it was functional, and Sam proved resourceful. He patched her wounds, restored her strength, and even managed to repair her damaged translator implant. Despite her initial contempt, Ariala couldn't deny Sam's competence. He was unlike any human she had encountered, pragmatic yet oddly optimistic, with a knack for turning scraps into solutions. Their conversations were stilted at first, laden with mutual distrust. But as Sam shared stories of his life as a salvager, his struggles to survive in a galaxy dominated by larger powers, Ariala found herself listening with curiosity. "Why do you fight for scraps?" she asked one evening, watching as Sam tinkered with a broken drone. Sam shrugged. "Sometimes scraps are all you've got, but it's what you do with them that matters." Ariala frowned. The Rethari believed in perfection, in superiority. Yet this human, with his patched-up ship and stubborn resolve, was thriving in his own chaotic way. Their fragile truce was upended when Sam intercepted a Dominion transmission. It was encoded, but Ariala recognized the signature. It was from her fleet. "You mind explaining this?" Sam asked, holding up the decrypted message. Ariala's blood ran cold as she read the text. The Dominion was planning a large-scale attack on a human colony in the Auroran Expanse. The colony had no strategic value. It was a civilian settlement. "They can't be serious," she muttered. "Oh, they're serious," Sam said grimly. "This kind of thing happens all the time. You Rethari don't like loose ends, and humans are a loose end you can't seem to tie up." Ariala's loyalty to the Dominion wavered for the first time in her life. This is a violation of our principles. The Dominion does not target civilians. Sam snorted. Maybe not officially, but war has a way of making people, alien or human, do things they shouldn't. Ariala wrestled with her conscience. She had dedicated her life to the Dominion, but the thought of innocent lives being snuffed out for a tactical advantage sickened her. When Sam announced his intention to warn the colony, Ariala was faced with a choice. She could sabotage his efforts, maintain her loyalty to the Dominion, and ensure the success of their mission. Or she could help him, betraying everything she had been taught. In the end, it wasn't logic or duty that guided her decision. It was the memory of Sam pulling her from the escape pod, his rough hands saving a life he had no reason to value. "I'll help you," she said quietly. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Really? What's the catch?" "No catch," she replied. "Just don't make me regret this." The journey to the colony was fraught with danger. Dominion patrols prowled the sector, and Ariala had to rely on her intimate knowledge of their tactics to evade detection. As they neared the colony, tensions ran high. Ariala and Sam argued frequently about strategy, morality, and the nature of their respective species. But amid the chaos, an unlikely bond began to form. Ariala began to see humanity not as a weakness, but as a strength. Sam's resilience, his capacity for compassion, and his refusal to give up, even in the face of overwhelming odds, were traits she had never encountered among her own kind. The colony on Aristau, nestled on the edge of the Auroran expanse, was a humble settlement of farmers, engineers, and refugees. It was a testament to humanity's determination to carve out a life in even the most inhospitable corners of the galaxy. As Sam's ship, the Wanderlight, approached the colony, Ariala's unease deepened. Through the viewport, she could see the sprawling dome structures of Aristau, shimmering faintly under the weak light of its distant sun. The settlement was defenseless. No shield generators, no orbital cannons, nothing that could withstand a Dominion assault. "They don't stand a chance," she said quietly. Sam's jaw tightened. "That's why we're here." But even Sam's optimism had its limits. The colony's defenses, or lack thereof, meant they couldn't rely on brute force to stop the Dominion fleet. They needed a plan, and fast. Ariala reviewed the Dominion transmission again, parsing every detail. The fleet planned to strike in less than 48 hours, deploying a swarm of automated drones ahead of the main force to cripple the colony's infrastructure. "I might have a solution," she said reluctantly. Sam glanced up from the console where he was preparing a distress signal. "I'm listening." Ariala hesitated. "The Dominion uses a centralized control network to coordinate its drones. If we can infiltrate their command ship and disable the network, the drones will be useless." "That's a big if," Sam said. "Do you have a better idea?" He sighed. "Not really. But how do we even get close enough to their command ship? They'll blow us out of the sky the moment we're detected." Ariala's gaze hardened. "Leave that to me." With time running out, Ariala used her Dominion credentials to craft a false identity for herself and Sam. Presenting him as her prisoner, she transmitted a coded message to the Dominion fleet, requesting permission to dock with the command ship. It was a gamble, but one that paid off. Within hours, they were aboard the Valix, the Dominion's flagship. The interior was stark and pristine, its corridors humming with an eerie silence broken only by the occasional patrol. "You've been here before," Sam whispered as they slipped through the ship, avoiding detection. Ariala nodded. "This was my first posting after I graduated from the academy. I know its layout well." Her familiarity with the ship allowed them to reach the drone control hub without incident. But as Ariala worked to override the security protocols, an alarm blared. "We've been made," she said grimly. Dominion guards swarmed the corridor, plasma rifles at the ready. Ariala and Sam were forced to retreat, taking cover in a storage bay. "This was a bad idea," Sam muttered, checking his pistol. Ariala ignored him, her mind racing. She activated her comlink and transmitted an urgent message to the Valix's captain. "This is Commander Ariala Vindar. I am on board and in pursuit of a human saboteur. He has compromised the drone network. Send reinforcements to Section 7 immediately." Sam froze. What are you doing? Ariala didn't look at him. Trust me. Moments later, Dominion reinforcements arrived, storming the storage bay. Ariala barked orders, directing them to secure Sam while she secured the network. As the guards dragged him away, Sam shot her a betrayed look. Ariala wasted no time. With the guards occupied, she slipped back into the control hub and resumed her work. Within minutes, she succeeded in uploading a virus into the network, disabling the drones. By the time the guards realized what had happened, it was too late. The Dominion fleet was forced to abort its attack, the crippled drones scattering aimlessly. Ariala used the chaos to escape, locating Sam in the brig. He stared at her, his expression a mix of anger and confusion. You sold me out, he said. I saved you, she replied. Sam didn't respond as she released him from his cell, but he followed her as they made their way back to the Wanderlight. The journey back to Aristau was tense. Sam sat silently in the cockpit, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a stony silence. Finally, Ariala spoke. I didn't have a choice. If I hadn't convinced them I was loyal, they would have killed us both. Sam turned to her, his eyes cold. Maybe. Or maybe you just couldn't stop playing both sides. Ariala flinched. I risked everything to stop that attack. For you. For your people. And I'm grateful, Sam said, his tone softening. But trust doesn't come easy for people like me. Especially not with someone like you. Ariala looked away, her chest tight. She had betrayed the Dominion, jeopardized everything she had worked for, and for what? To earn the trust of a single human? As they approached the colony, a new transmission crackled over the comms. It was a distress signal, not from Aristau, but from a neighboring system. This isn't over, Sam said grimly. The Dominion won't stop with one failed attack. Ariala nodded. Then we'll stop them again. Sam glanced at her, his expression unreadable. We. Ariala met his gaze. We. The Wanderlight accelerated toward the colony, its mismatched engines blazing against the stars. The battle for Aristau was over, but the war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. Ariala and Sam were welcomed cautiously by the people of Aristau, their arrival marked with suspicion as much as relief. News of the Dominion's retreat spread quickly, but so did rumors of Ariala's role in the attack. Her Ret Hari features, sharp, regal, and unmistakably alien, made her a walking symbol of distrust. Despite this, Sam vouched for her. She stopped the attack, he told the colony leaders, his voice steady. Without her, none of us would be standing here. Ariala stood silently beside him, her posture rigid as the human crowd murmured among themselves. The stares burned into her, but she refused to flinch. She had made her choice. The reprieve was short-lived. Hours after their arrival, Sam and Ariala were called to an emergency council meeting. Taryn Vale, the colony's de facto leader, was a stern woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much loss. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. We intercepted this an hour ago, Taryn said, playing a distorted transmission. The garbled voice was unmistakably Ret Hari, and Ariala's blood ran cold as the message became clear. This is Admiral Kel'Tharaz of the Ret Hari Dominion. The attack on Aristau was merely the first step. Humanity's resistance in the Auroran expanse will end. Prepare for total annihilation. Sam cursed under his breath. How long do we have? Days, maybe less, Taryn said. They'll bring the full weight of their fleet this time. Ariala's mind raced. She knew Admiral Thuraz by reputation, a tactician as ruthless as he was brilliant. If he was involved, the colony's chances of survival were slim. We can't fight them head-on, Ariala said. Not with what you have here. Taryn's eyes narrowed. Then what do you suggest? Ariala hesitated. A preemptive strike. Take out their fleet before they reach the colony. The room erupted into chaos. Voices clamored, some shouting in agreement, others accusing Ariala of leading them into a trap. Sam raised his hands, his voice cutting through the noise. Enough. She's right. If we sit here and wait, we're dead. He turned to Ariala. What do you need? Ariala's plan was ambitious. Infiltrate the Dominion fleet using Sam's ship as cover, disable their flagship, and disrupt their command structure. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. The Wanderlight was retrofitted with whatever weapons and stealth tech the colony could spare. Volunteers stepped forward to join the mission, brave souls willing to risk everything for a chance at survival. Among them was Jonas Rigg, a grizzled engineer with a penchant for explosives, and Lena Kale, a sharp-eyed scout who had lost her family in a previous Dominion attack. As the team prepared to depart, Taryn pulled Sam aside. "You trust her?" she asked, nodding toward Ariala. Sam hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I do." Taryn's expression softened, but her tone remained firm. "Then don't let that trust blind you. If she turns on you, you do what you have to." The journey to intercept the Dominion fleet was tense. The Wanderlight's small crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the confrontation, while Sam and Ariala pored over schematics of the Dominion flagship. "This is the control node," Ariala explained, pointing to a holographic display. "If we can overload it, it will sever their communications and throw the fleet into chaos." "And how do we get to it?" Sam asked. Ariala's expression darkened. "We don't. I do. You'll need to stay on the Wanderlight and provide cover." Sam frowned. "You're not going in there alone." "I'm the only one who can," Ariala said firmly. "The Dominion won't hesitate to kill you, but I might be able to convince them I'm still loyal, long enough to complete the mission." Sam's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. Just don't get yourself killed." When the Wanderlight emerged from hyperspace, the Dominion fleet loomed ahead. Dozens of ships arranged in a perfect formation, their sleek, black hulls glinting against the stars. "Here we go," Sam muttered, gripping the controls. The Wanderlight activated its stealth systems, slipping past the outer patrols. Ariala transmitted an Old Dominion clearance code, guiding them toward the flagship. The deception worked, at least at first. The Wanderlight was allowed to dock, but the moment Ariala stepped aboard, the alarms sounded. "They know," she said through the comlink. "You need to hold them off while I reach the control node." The Wanderlight's crew fought valiantly, using every trick in their arsenal to keep the Dominion forces at bay. Jonas rigged makeshift explosives to block the docking bay, while Lena provided cover fire from the ship's turret. Meanwhile, Ariala navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the flagship, her heart pounding as she evaded patrols. Her Dominion training served her well, but doubt gnawed at her. Would she make it in time? And even if she did, would it be enough? As she neared the control node, she encountered Admiral Thuraz himself. The imposing Red Hari stood in her path, his piercing eyes filled with disdain. "Commander Vindar," he said coldly, "I should have known you were the traitor." Ariala raised her weapon, but Thuraz didn't flinch. "Do you truly believe these humans are worth saving?" "They are," she said, her voice steady. "More than you'll ever understand." Ariala tightened her grip on the weapon, her finger hovering over the trigger. Admiral Thuraz's imposing frame filled the corridor, his calm composure a stark contrast to the chaos erupting across the flagship. "You disappoint me, Commander," he said, stepping forward. His voice was low, resonant with the authority of a lifetime in command. "You were one of the finest officers to serve the Dominion, and now you squander your potential on these primitives." "They're not primitives," Ariala snapped, forcing herself to remain steady. "They're resilient, resourceful, and more alive than we ever allowed ourselves to be." Thuraz tilted his head, as if considering her words. Then, with a flick of his hand, 2 Red Hari guards emerged from the shadows behind him, plasma rifles aimed squarely at her. "You've always been misguided, Vindar," he said. "But this is treason. I won't give you the chance to sabotage everything we've built." Ariala's mind raced. She was outgunned and outnumbered, with no way to overpower Thuraz and his guards. But she still had the element of surprise, and one last trick. "Maybe I am a traitor," she said, her voice steady, "but I learned it from you." Thuraz's expression faltered, confusion flickering across his face for the briefest moment. It was all she needed. Ariala activated a hidden EMP device strapped to her wrist, releasing a localized pulse that knocked out the guard's weapons and sent Thuraz reeling. She lunged forward, striking him with the butt of her rifle and sending him sprawling to the ground. The guards, momentarily disoriented, scrambled to recover, But Ariala didn't wait. She sprinted down the corridor toward the control node, her pulse pounding in her ears. The control node was a massive, glowing sphere of interlocking circuits and energy conduits, suspended in the center of a cavernous chamber. The hum of its power reverberated through the air, a tangible reminder of the Dominion's technological might. Ariala approached the terminal, her hands flying over the controls. She entered the override codes, her heart hammering as the system resisted her efforts. "Come on," she muttered. "Come on." Behind her, the sound of boots echoed in the corridor. Tharaz was coming, and she was running out of time. Meanwhile, aboard the Wanderlight, Sam and the crew were in a desperate fight for survival. Dominion fighters swarmed the ship, their precision strikes overwhelming the colony's patchwork defenses. Jonas worked frantically to patch hull breaches, while Lena fired the ship's turret with deadly accuracy. "This is bad," Jonas growled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Real bad." Sam grimaced, his hands steady on the controls as he maneuvered the ship through the chaos. "We just have to hold a little longer." A Dominion fighter locked onto their tail, its weapons charging. Sam braced for impact, then watched in astonishment as the fighter exploded in a burst of flames. A human resistance ship emerged from hyperspace, followed by half a dozen more. The colony had called for reinforcements, and they had arrived just in time. Sam whooped, his spirits lifting as the tide of the battle began to turn. Back in the control chamber, Admiral Tharaz appeared in the doorway, flanked by a squad of heavily armed soldiers. "Step away from the terminal, Vindar," he commanded, his voice icy. Ariala didn't look up. The override was nearly complete, but she needed a few more seconds. "Don't do this," Tharaz said, taking a step forward. "The Dominion's strength is order. Without it, chaos will consume the galaxy. Is that what you want? To see everything burn?" Ariala hesitated. For a moment, his words struck a chord. The Dominion had given her purpose, discipline, and a sense of belonging. Was she truly prepared to destroy it? Then she thought of Sam, of the humans fighting for their lives, and of the colony that had no chance without her. "Yes," she said softly, her fingers flying over the terminal. "If it means saving them, then yes." Tharaz roared in fury, raising his weapon, but it was too late. Ariala hit the final key, triggering the override. The control node sputtered, its energy conduits flaring brightly before the entire system went dark. Across the fleet, Dominion ships faltered as their coordinated systems collapsed. The automated drones, now directionless, spiraled into disarray. "Fall back," Tharaz bellowed to his soldiers, retreating as the chamber's lights flickered ominously. Ariala turned to face him, her weapon at the ready. But Tharaz didn't attack. He simply stared at her, his expression a mixture of rage and sorrow. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows as the Dominion forces began their retreat. The Wanderlight picked up Ariala just as the Dominion flagship began to crumble. Sam hauled her aboard, his relief evident despite the tension between them. "Nice timing," he said as she collapsed into a seat. Ariala managed a faint smile. "You didn't think I'd let you have all the fun, did you?" The crew of the Wanderlight cheered as the Dominion fleet retreated, the human reinforcements chasing them back into hyperspace. For the first time in what felt like forever, hope flickered in the Auroran expanse. As the Wanderlight limped back to Aristau, Sam and Ariala sat in the cockpit, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. "So," Sam said finally, "what now?" Ariala looked out at the stars, her expression unreadable. "I don't know," she admitted. "The Dominion will never forgive me for what I've done. I can't go back." "Then don't," Sam said simply. "Stay here. Fight with us." Ariala hesitated. She had spent her entire life fighting for the Dominion, believing in its vision of order and control. But now, for the first time, she saw another way. "I'll think about it," she said. Sam grinned. "That's all I ask." The fragile peace that settled over Aristau after the Dominion's retreat lasted mere days. The colonists worked tirelessly to rebuild, their eyes always on the horizon, wary of another attack. Sam and Ariala, too, were restless. The Dominion's retreat wasn't defeat. It was a recalibration. Ariala knew her former superiors well enough to understand they would strike again, harder and more decisively. Ariala spent her days assisting with the colony's defenses, sharing her knowledge of Dominion tactics and technology. Some colonists accepted her help with wary gratitude, while others eyed her with open suspicion. "People don't change overnight," Sam said one evening as they worked side by side on a damaged turret. "Give them time." Ariala tightened a bolt, her expression unreadable. "I don't have time to earn their trust, Sam. When the Dominion comes back, they won't care that I betrayed them. This colony will burn unless we're ready." The Dominion's inevitable return came sooner than anyone anticipated. A distress signal from a neighboring system arrived in the dead of night, relayed by a fleeing merchant vessel. The message was brief but chilling. "Dominion fleet en route. No survivors in the Theta Core system. Prepare for annihilation." The council convened immediately. The mood was grim as Terran addressed the gathered leaders. "The Theta Core system was well fortified," she said. "If the Dominion wiped it out, we won't stand a chance against their full fleet. We can't just wait here to die." Jonas shouted, his fists clenched. Ariala, seated at the edge of the table, spoke up. "We don't have to. The Dominion is strong, but they're not invincible. Their fleets rely on centralized coordination. If we can disrupt their command structure again, we can weaken them enough to stand a chance." "And how do you propose we do that?" Terran asked. Ariala leaned forward. "The key is the Aerethus Archive, a mobile data repository that contains the Dominion's fleet deployment codes. If we capture it, we can anticipate their movements and strike preemptively." Terran frowned. "And where is this archive?" "It moves constantly," Ariala admitted. "But I know where it will be in 3 days. There's a refueling station in the Typhos Rift. It's our best chance to intercept it." The colony leaders debated the plan for hours, weighing the risks. Finally, Terran turned to Sam. "What do you think?" Sam looked at Ariala, his expression conflicted. "If she says it can work, I believe her. But it's going to take more than just us to pull this off." Terran nodded. "Then we'll call in every favor we're owed. If this mission fails, there won't be anyone left to collect." Over the next 2 days, the Wanderlight was transformed into a makeshift command ship. Reinforcements from nearby systems trickled in. Ragtag groups of resistance fighters, scrappy ships armed with scavenged weapons, and a few brave volunteers willing to risk everything. Among them was Ezekiel Miles, a charismatic pirate captain with a reputation for turning impossible odds into victory. He arrived with a fleet of 5 heavily armed frigates, greeting Sam with a roguish grin. "Can't let you have all the glory, Calder," he said, clapping Sam on the back. Ariala watched the exchange with mild amusement. "Friend of yours?" Sam smirked. "Something like that. Let's just hope his ego doesn't get us killed." The Typhos Rift was a treacherous region of space, filled with swirling clouds of ionized gas and jagged asteroids that made navigation a nightmare. It was the perfect place for an ambush, and the Dominion knew it. When the fleet arrived, the Aerethus Archive was already guarded by a formidable escort: 3 Dominion battlecruisers, a dozen smaller ships, and a swarm of automated drones. Ariala stood on the Wanderlight's bridge, her sharp eyes scanning the tactical display. "Their defenses are concentrated around the archive," she said. "If we can draw their escorts away, we'll have a shot at disabling its engines." Sam nodded. "Ezekiel, think your frigates can handle that?" Ezekiel grinned through the comlink. "Piece of cake." The resistance fleet split into 2 groups. Ezekiel's frigates launched a daring assault on the Dominion escorts, drawing their fire away from the archive. Meanwhile, the Wanderlight and a small team of fighters slipped through the chaos, dodging asteroids and drone swarms to close in on their target. Ariala and Sam led the boarding party, their boots clanging against the archive's sleek metallic hull as they cut through an airlock. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, the air thick with the hum of machinery. "We'll need to split up," Ariala said, her voice steady despite the tension. "I'll handle the data core. You and Jonas secure the engine room and plant the charges." Sam hesitated. "Are you sure you don't need backup?" Ariala gave him a faint smile. "I'll manage. Just don't blow up the ship before I'm done." They parted ways, each group moving with practiced efficiency. Ariala encountered little resistance as she navigated the archive's labyrinthine corridors, her Dominion clearance codes granting her access to restricted areas. When she reached the data core, she activated her hacking device and began downloading the fleet deployment codes. Back in the engine room, Sam and Jonas planted the last of the charges. "That should do it," Jonas said, wiping his hands. "Now let's get out of here before—" An alarm blared, cutting him off. The Dominion had discovered their presence. Sam cursed under his breath. "Ariala, we're out of time. Are you ready?" "Almost," Ariala replied, her voice strained. The download was at 90%, but Dominion soldiers were closing in fast. "Ariala, we've got to go," Sam shouted. Ariala glanced at the progress bar, then at the door. She had a choice: complete the download and risk capture, or abandon it and escape with her life. She took a deep breath, her decision made. Ariala's hands hovered over the console as the progress bar crept to 95%. The distant sound of approaching boots grew louder, each step a ticking clock toward disaster. She exhaled sharply, her decision crystallizing in that moment. "Sam," she said over the comlink, her voice calm but resolute, "I'm staying to finish the download. Get Jonas and the others out of here. Now." "What? No way." Sam's voice crackled in her earpiece, panic evident. "You don't get to play the martyr. We can find another way." "There is no other way," Ariala replied. "The codes are too important. If we don't get them, more colonies will fall. You know this." Sam hesitated, torn between fury and understanding. Finally, he growled, "You better make it out of there, Vindar. That's an order." Ariala smirked despite the tension. "I don't take orders from you, human." The download hit 100% just as the first Dominion soldiers burst into the room. Ariala grabbed the data chip, ducking behind the console as plasma bolts scorched the air. Her mind raced. Escape was nearly impossible, but the codes couldn't die with her. She activated her comlink. "Sam, I'm sending the codes to your ship. They're encrypted. Only you can access them." Sam's voice was frantic. "What about you?" Ariala didn't answer. She darted toward the far side of the room, firing her weapon to cover her retreat. She knew the odds were slim, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. Meanwhile, the Wanderlight had detached from the archive and was dodging Dominion fire as it maneuvered through the chaotic battlefield. Sam gritted his teeth, his hands tight on the controls. "We've got the codes," Jonas said, panting as he collapsed into the co-pilot's seat. "Now we just need her." Sam growled in frustration. "Ariala, where are you?" A burst of static was his only reply. Then, through the comms, Ariala's voice broke through, strained but clear. "I've reached an escape pod. I'm launching now." Seconds later, a small pod shot away from the archive, weaving through the debris field. Sam veered the Wanderlight toward her, his heart pounding as Dominion ships closed in. "Hang on," he shouted, pushing the engines to their limit. The Wanderlight swooped in just as the Dominion flagship unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. The escape pod docked with a jarring clang, and Sam wasted no time. "Got her," Lena shouted from the rear of the ship. "Good," Sam muttered. "Now let's get out of here." The Wanderlight jumped to hyperspace just as the archive exploded in a brilliant cascade of fire and debris. The Resistance fleet had achieved a miracle, crippling the Dominion's command structure and scattering their forces. Back on board, Ariala stumbled into the cockpit, her usually pristine appearance disheveled. Sam turned, his eyes narrowing. "You made it," he said, his voice gruff. Ariala smirked, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her. "Told you I would." The tension between them broke as Sam let out a shaky laugh. "You're impossible, you know that?" "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft. The stolen fleet codes gave the Resistance an unprecedented advantage. With the Dominion's movements exposed, humanity was able to anticipate their attacks, turning the tide of the war. Ariala became a key strategist for the Resistance, her intimate knowledge of the Dominion invaluable. Though many distrusted her, she proved her loyalty time and again, leading daring missions and standing alongside the people she once despised. As the months passed, the Auroran expanse began to stabilize. Colonies that had once been on the brink of annihilation now thrived, and the Dominion's grip on the region loosened. On a quiet evening, Sam and Ariala stood on a ridge overlooking Eris Tau, the colony aglow with the lights of a hopeful future. "You could go back to the Dominion, you know," Sam said, breaking the silence. "Try to find a way to fix it from within." Ariala shook her head. "The Dominion doesn't need fixing. It needs to end. And I belong here now." Sam smiled. "Good. We could use someone like you." Ariala glanced at him, her sharp features softening. "I thought you didn't trust me." "I don't trust easily," Sam admitted. "But you've earned it." They stood together in the fading light, their differences no longer a barrier, but a strength. In the vast, uncertain expanse of the galaxy, they had found something rare and powerful, a reason to believe in each other. The Dominion's defeat in the Auroran expanse was not the end of the war, but it was a turning point. Humanity's resilience, bolstered by allies like Ariala, proved that even the mightiest empire could be challenged. As for Sam and Ariala, their story was just beginning. Together, they would face new battles, forge new alliances, and continue to fight for a galaxy where trust and hope could triumph over fear and control. The stars awaited.